The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, addressed by Swamiji to the residents of Madurai in 1897, Part 2. But beyond this, there is a still greater difficulty. There are two sorts of truth we find in our Shastras. One that is based upon the eternal nature of man, the one that deals with the eternal relation of God, soul, and nature, and the other with local circumstances, environments of the time, social institutions of the period, and so forth. The first class of truths is chiefly embodied in our Vedas, our scriptures, the second in the Smritis, the Puranas, etc. We must remember that for all periods the Vedas are the final goal and authority. And if the Puranas differ in any respect with the Vedas, that part of the Puranas is to be rejected without mercy. We find then that in all these Smritis the teachings are different. One Smriti says, this is the custom, and this should be the practice of this age. Another says that this is the practice of this age, and so forth. This is the achar which should be the custom of Satyuga, and this is the achar which should be the custom of Kali Yuga, and so forth. Now, this is one of the most glorious doctrines that you have, that eternal truths, being based upon the nature of man, will never change so long as man lives. They are for all times omnipresent, universal virtues. But the Smritis speak generally of the local circumstances, of duties arising from different environments, and they change in the course of time. This you have always to remember, that because a little social custom is going to be changed, you are not going to lose your religion. Not at all. Remember, these customs have already been changed. There was a time in this very India when without eating beef, no Brahmin could remain a Brahmin. You read in the Vedas how when a sannyasi, a king, or a great man came into a house, the best bullock was killed. How in time it was found that we were an agricultural race. Killing the best bulls meant annihilation of the race. Therefore the practice was stopped, and a voice was raised against the killing of cows. Sometimes we find existing then what we now consider the most horrible customs. In the course of time, other laws had to be made. These in turn will have to go, and other Smritis will come. This is one fact we have to learn, that the Vedas, being eternal, will be one and the same throughout all ages, but the Smritis will have an end. As time rolls on, more and more of the Smritis will go, sages will come, and they will change and direct society into better channels, into duties and into paths which accord with the necessity of the age, and without which it is impossible that society can live. Thus we have to guide our course avoiding these two dangers. And I hope that every one of us here will have the breath enough and at the same time faith enough to understand what that means, which I suppose is the inclusion of everything and not the exclusion. I want the intensity of the fanatic plus the extensity of the materialistic. Deep as the ocean, broad as the infinite skies, that is the sort of heart we want. Let us be as progressive as any nation that ever existed, and at the same time as faithful and conservative towards our traditions as Hindus alone know how to be. In plain words, we have first to learn the distinction between the essentials and non-essentials in everything. The essentials are eternal. The non-essentials only have value for a certain time. And if after a time they are not replaced by something essential, they are positively dangerous. I do not mean that you should stand up and revile all your old customs and institutions. Certainly not. You must not revile even the most evil one of them. Revile none. Even those customs that are now appearing to be positive evils have been positively life-giving in times past. And if we have to remove these, we must now not do so with curses, but with blessings and gratitude for the glorious work these customs have done for the preservation of our race. And we must also remember that the leaders of our societies have never been either generals or kings, but rishis. And who are the rishis? The rishi, as he is called in the Upanishads, is not an ordinary man, but a mantradrashta. He is a man who sees religion, to whom religion is not merely book learning, not augmentation, not speculation, nor much talking, but actual realization. A coming face to face with truths which transcend the senses. This is rishihood. And that rishihood does not belong to any age or time or even sex or caste. Vatsyayana says truth must be realized. And we have to remember that you and I and every one of us will be called upon to become rishis. And we must have faith in ourselves. We must become world movers, for everything is in us. We must see religion face to face, experience it, and thus solve our doubts about it. And then standing up in the glorious light of rishihood, each one of us will be a giant. And every word falling from our lips will carry behind it that infinite sanction of security. And before us, evil will vanish by itself without the necessity of cursing anyone, without the necessity of abusing anyone, without the necessity of fighting anyone in the world. May the Lord help us, each one of us here, to realize the rishihood for our own salvation and that of others.